Hello ladies and gentlemen, Azagai here, bringing you another video for Conqueror's Blade, published by Chorus Interactive. This is just a general discussion on the Swinefeathers, and what I have, what generally I have, well, the knowledge I have on them since release from the Monday. Unfortunately, I didn't get to actually play around with them on the PTR. There was a bit of an issue for me to get on, mostly because there was some weird update issue, so I needed to re-download the whole thing. Now, I want to bring to your attention a lot of things that I have discovered when kind of feeling out this unit. It is, for all intents and purposes, not very good. Um, Very few and far between you're going to be using your stakes, and if you do use your stakes, you better hope that they make their money's worth, because you are gimping your unit by quite a bit once those spears are gone. And I want to explain what happens when you do. Now, simply glossing over, the stakes are very strong. No doubt about it, OP against cavalry. If cavalry hits these stakes need to be one-shot, or they will one-shot the cavalry. Most cases, except for very, very, very peculiar abuse cases, all cavalry will simply just die if they try to break through these stakes. Good. I don't like cavalry. The bad thing is that you're left with a gimp unit. This unit is not very good in terms of DPS, and I want to explain this in a very strange way, but simply put, the Swinefeather's baseline DPS is in the gutter. They don't deal very much. They don't deal very much damage. I mean, they deal the same amount of damage against their contemporaries. Kriegsrat actually hits harder. Imperial Acquisiers probably hit harder. And again, it's not like how they ended up is not very competitive. What you have access to is not making up for their weakness. Now, that is not to say they aren't more usable. There is a caveat to everything. They're not ammo hungry like the Kriegsrat Fusiliers, even though in terms of like DPS and stuff, they don't have very much ammo. They only have 600 ammo, so you're not gonna. So you only be shooting for at most 2 minutes, if not a minute and a half if you have the stakes. But let me just read you some numbers here. So we've had the PTR Swinefeather is clocked in for about 5 shots a second. That's not very fast. Now, what we didn't test was shots without the without the spears. Interestingly enough, that is very important, and it has been brought to my attention that it probably was something that I did test, but I can't remember if I did or not. And this becomes super important here on the PTR since the last update or something. So we're coming from around about 10% higher base damage, clocking in only at 5 per second. Their relative DPS pushes them to basically slightly higher than Imperial Archers in normal mode, by the way. Not using Bodkin. Bodkin, by the way, it basically doubles their fire rate because of reasons. Um, so this is about to time out, but the fire rate they have on live right now is 6.19. That's what I have it recorded as. You can test this yourself. You can try to figure this out yourself. But they shoot basically 6 and 1/5 shots shots a second. That's the whole unit, by the way. Individually, they only shoot once every 4 seconds, which is up from shooting once every 6 seconds. Now, the sad thing here is we know that once the unit traits came in, we know that the spears, when they use them as stocks and stuff, they give them damage and accuracy. What we are not told is that it also gives them fire rate. But inversely, it could also be they actually shoot slower without the spears. So, not that the spears are yeah, the whole shenanigan stuff. Now, how much slower? It goes from 6.19 to 5.04. That is a huge decline. And I mean a huge decline in fire rate. We're talking a 20% decrease in fire rate comparatively from their compared to their with spear version. That is on top of the damage decrease and the accuracy decrease. Now, I have rough damage numbers for these, but basically with the stakes, they're hitting 3k easily without 2.4, 2.5. They're losing 20% damage. They're losing 20% fire rate, 20% damage, and I'm pretty sure I don't calculate accuracy very well, but I'm gonna just put it simply. I think they're losing 20% accuracy as well. They they seem to have a very high accuracy by default, but it the accuracy decrease is enough to actually tell. Like 10%, I would not be able to, for the life of me, I would not be able to tell. I cannot tell if an archer unit has the 10% accuracy doctrine on it. It literally looks no different. I can tell when a musket unit has the 20% accuracy doctrine on it. 10% to 20%, yeah. 20% I can tell. So it's kind of like a double whammy. You're losing a whopper of amount of DPS without that stake. Would you want to use that stake if you're going to use this unit as DPS unit? Absolutely not. Now, other things that I have to kind of bring up is something very interesting actually is triple shooting. Triple shooting has this very strange, and I say very strange, delay with stakes. It takes a little bit longer for them to start firing in triple shooting when they have the spears. And this culminates in wastage. Not that it matters too much because they'll still shoot three times. But let's do the math on this. They shoot 3 times for 12 seconds in triple shooting. and there's 24 of them, so they're shooting, like, sorry, if they shoot, so I'm not going to do the math. I'm not going to do the math. Sorry. I'm not going to explain the math to you, but basically in triple shooting, they're only shooting at six shots a second. That is slower than if they were to shoot freehand or in free attack mode. That is hilarious. It essentially almost makes the triple shooting almost irrelevant. Now, I think I'm the cause of this because I was the one that stated that they should decrease it. I didn't think they would decrease it so much. Now, the other thing here is that triple shooting also has a 10% damage increase, so there is still an incentive to use triple shooting when you can. But it's not so egregious anymore, comparatively to what it was, to what it used to be. Because on the PTR, we have triple shooting clocked at 7 a second. That is very much faster. At least 20% faster. Well, 15 point 15 point no 6 16 point 16.5, whatever, 16.6 recurring. It is much faster. I just want to explain that it was much faster before, and we had it clocked in for like 40% damage increase, and that was insane. They've toned it down a lot, and I am going to blame the fire penetration doctrine, as I have been the entire time. You cannot convince me that swine feathers are not a GIMP unit because because the swine feathers fire penetration doctrine exists. Because this doctrine exists, I think that they're really careful in how strong they want the swine feathers to be. Be that as it may, that just leaves them not very competitive in the long run because they're just not any good. Now, I also think they downgraded the knockdown to a knockback. Um, I think it's a better change, but still, I'd rather they just not have the CC or put it down to a days and increase the chances. But there's a lot of things that I would would change. I would obviously get rid of the penetration thing, the 75% at like 2 penetration. So the other funny thing is that when they don't have the stakes, their delay, so they have an inbuilt about 2 seconds formation delay. Without the spear, they actually are much more responsive when forming up. They form up in 2 seconds, shoot as almost a complete volley, unlike when I showed you earlier. No, I didn't show you earlier, but um, when they actually, I probably should show you so that you can kind of understand what's happening. And I'm probably gonna bug out here, but so what's happening is that when you have the stakes, there's about a 4 second delay. They fire faster with the stakes, so they'll fire every 4 seconds. What ends up happening when you don't have the stakes is, or sorry, I say stakes and spirit interchangeably here, but I hope you guys will understand what I'm trying to convey. So,
Unit is retreating.
don't really need any targets. Obviously, you need to be in 6 column to activate this. So, You can watch the timer at the top, or you can just rewind the video if you want. But once I activate this ability, it'll take 4 seconds before they'll fire the first shot. I mean, before all of them fire. There's some kind of weird delay. And then they'll shoot every 4 seconds after that, finishing off the 12 seconds duration with 3 shots in total. Now, there is something really funny happens when you switch over to the
Form shield wall.
to the no stake one. The delay actually gets shortened to 2 seconds, and they're a little bit more coherent. That is to say, they shoot the shots closer together instead of spread out, which I find much, much better. And again, 2 seconds, bam. But they take about 5 seconds to shoot. So they'll shoot the last one, and that's it. This guy actually didn't even shoot because he took so long to get over into his formation. Again, that's a formation thing. That's an AI thing. If they can fix that, they can fix that. If they can't, they can't. Again, that actually turns out to be a fire rate of 4.8 without mistakes. Which, do mind you, we are without the spears, without the stock, without the stake. They only shoot at around about 5.04. Basically, let's just round it to 5. That is a loss of... My goodness, that's like... Is that a loss of 4%? Is that a 4% loss? Give or take. Basically, you're losing DPS. Although there is an increase of 10% base damage, so it's actually a net positive in the end. But I'ma just put it here is that like triple shooting is just not very strong. What you lose in technicality, you don't make up in benefits. So the Swinefeather is really making it difficult to kind of praise them right now, because the only thing that they have going for them is their anti-cavalry stake, which just one-shots cavalry, makes it a hassle for infantry, and infantry that don't have low cooldown abilities to smash through it, it could be really cool against stuff like Scylla does. They'll need to use an ability to get through it, unless the hero jumps over the stakes and the Scylla uses their empowered death strikes to hit. But that's beside the point. They're really good at slowing down both cavalry and infantry, though I think the infantry section is a little bit more impressive, mostly because in order to get through the stakes, you need to use an ability. For most infantry, their basic attacks are just not strong enough. So you really can use the stakes to absorb first attack, especially in a scenario where the enemy wants to attack. So they're really great as a defensive option, as utility. But bringing it back, their range DPS is in the gutter. Absolute gutter trash. So with all the other, besides the Matchlock Ashigaru or Ashigarus, they are the second worst. the second worst. Oh, well, according to this chart, I haven't updated it yet, but I think the Vassal Longbow are actually much higher. But yeah. So, oh, actually no, they actually would be competitive against the Vassal Longbowmen in the context that they are fighting the same thing and it's not range. So, funnily enough, I'm just doing some Just doing some round calculations here, but the Swinefeathers basically do about as much damage as the Vassal Longbowmen when shooting non-ranged units, and this is not really good, but um, it gives you kind of like their relative DPS in terms of another unit, because I can't compare them to Imperial Arquebusiers because they're nowhere near Imperial Arquebusiers in terms of damage. Not anymore, anyway. They used to be, but without the massive increase in damage, without the faster fire rate, losing those two things, they're they're really bad. Triple shooting is just really bad. It's completely inferior. Though, I mean, it's cool. I like the formation. The fact that it's worthless is just another point. The other thing here is without the without the without the spheres, they lose out on so much damage, and this carries forward. I mean, carries through to triple shooting and all your DPS things. So they're not really that good with the stakes, and they're not really that good without the stakes. They may have shorter range at base 50. They get like 9 range straight off the bat with the first one, and I hate that. And I hate that. I hate that the developers said that they're short range, but immediately gives them a massive range increase to put them only one short of other Arquebusiers, because we have to remember that other Arquebusiers, like generic, are 60. Again, there's a lot of differences between the Arquebusiers because they make every unit different, but base range 60, 50 first, um, literally the first node is an 18% range increase, which gives them 9 range. That's 59 range. They're one short of 60. You think we're stupid? Not to mention, bottom line gives you extra range, but never go bottom line because I'll also have to explain that as well. Hopefully, this lets me out. Or not. But basically, the bottom line Veterancy node is bugged. The one that increases fire rate without the stock, that's bugged. From what I understand, that's bugged. Most of top line does seem to be working. The stake stuff I haven't tested out. But overall, it is a tragic unit. It is fun to use. It's not really effective. Again, there are better options, and unless you're really using that stake, and I'm telling you right now, you shouldn't, because you'll lose so much of your DPS for using that ability. You may as well go back to a supply and get a new spear. So, just to round things off, on live, they're shooting probably around Vassal Longbowman level. In terms of DPS, in terms of DPS, they're shooting around about Vassal Longbow level. They only shoot around about 6.2 shots a second. It's not particularly fast. It's not that fast. Um, their triple shooting only has a 10% base increase in damage, so that 21% increase in damage on triple shooting starting to look really good. If you're going to use the sphere, know that you're not going to be doing very much damage. You're losing 20% of your damage, 20% of your fire rate, and 20% of your accuracy. That is rough numbers. Don't quote me on that, because this is just kind of what I figured and what I kind of realized. So, um, please understand that I'm not trying to cover my ass here. Well, I am, but you're losing so much of your DPS when you use the stakes. It's not even a joke how much DPS you're losing in terms of in like the 20% damage decrease is already like massive, but the 20% fire rate as well, also equally as massive and crazy because it's on top of the 20% damage decrease. The accuracy decrease can really get stuffed because they're really high accuracy anyway. You're probably gonna, well, you're gonna miss a couple shots more, but in a dense pile of stuff, you're not really gonna miss. And at the distances they're shooting, they still have very high accuracy. I only barely notice it because you like see a couple of shots go off, and it it obviously amounts to like the 20% decrease. So in all fairness and calculations, you're probably losing. Oh my goodness, you're probably losing almost 50% of your damage. That's not a joke, by the way. You're probably losing around about 50% of your damage once you use the spear. Um, that's not great, and definitely not something anyone wants to experience. But is the spear really worth it? I don't think so, unless you catch a cavalry unit, a glorified sacrificial delay. The thing about the spear as well is that they also provide a really strange debuff that puts some kind of yellow icon. It's similar to the disarmed one, but it only works against abilities that are charge related. Um, haven't really been on the other end of that because I just avoid the spears, but I'm I'm honestly just baffled at how terrible this unit ended up coming on to live, and the fact that they made the Retail Pistoliers quite strong and still have very strong ability, but for these guys, they decided to just not give them anything good. At least I thought the triple shooting would have stayed stable. They increased the basic damage, which was good, but they lost 10% of their base. Statistically, they lost 10% of their base damage, so they're down by 10%. But they increased the fire rate from 5 to 6.2, which is like 24%, almost 25. I think let's just round it 25%, or 24%. 24% is more accurate. Um, so that 10% decrease was basically nothing. Um, when you've got 24% odd increase in DPS. The sad thing here is that when you lose the sphere, you drop down to basically PTR level, which was again not very competitive. And to put this into kind of perspective, you're realistically only dealing as much as Vassal Longbowman, but you don't have the slow. You don't have. Is it just the slow? I think it's just slow. You don't have the slow, and you have a temporary barrier. Temporary barrier. I want this unit to be good, and I want to express my disappointment that they basically gave us a unit that's just not very good. Do I blame the developers for doing this? Not really. They kind of shot themselves in the foot by giving us a doctrine that seriously overpowered, and they made it the default one. And I should have realized that if it was going to be in the unit challenges, once the season started, people would have seen the description, people would have seen it, and they definitely would not want that doctrine to be changed. Unfortunately, we're, we're left with a unit that, without that doctrine, is very mediocre. Very mediocre, probably garbage. And I do believe that when you add everything up, the swine feathers in triple shooting will be competitive once you have that. If you go top line and you have that fire penetration doctrine, that is realistically the only time you're going to be competitive. Because, first of all, that fire penetration gives you CC. Second of all, it increases your DPS by 50%. And if you go top line, you get 21% increase in damage, plus all the utility stuff, but you still have that 50-second cooldown, so you are screwed if you don't have it. And it's basically not realistically, it's not it's basically not realistically very strong. Now, the last thing I want to mention is the block break. They have neutered the block break to the point that I can't even tell if they have block break anymore. Um, it's actually their base wise, it's so low that I don't think I can see it. So they either completely removed it or they toned it down to 100 or lower than 100, and their fire rate is just not fast enough to actually break any of the heavy shield units that well, I've only tested on the training ground, and the elite stalwarts also have this weird thing where some CCs don't work against it, particularly concussion. But basically, um, they don't get block breaked by these guys, and that says a lot. So take that as you will. The block break is down, but I think with the top line increase in block break and the um, double hit for the fire penetration, they should do fairly well against shields. Again, 200 is not exactly a lot, but if you see your shield units getting shredded, don't be surprised that on the other side, what's shooting them is the Swinefeathers, because, again, with all said and done, you can definitely make these guys competitive once you get that fire penetration doctrine. You go top line. I don't recommend bottom line at all. There's a couple of things that are bugged, and definitely, definitely, definitely forget about the spears. They're worthless at this point unless you are going, and I say going, to eat up a cavalry unit, because that's the only time that they're going to be worth it. Infantry, not even going to get a scratch. They're going to be delayed for like 5, maybe 10 seconds if they don't have an ability to smash through it. And again, Imperial, like, piercing damage, um, does basically zilch to the spike. So, praise be if you're shooting polearm units, but polearm units are very susceptible to range in the first place. So, wow, shocker. But that's all. I I definitely was surprised by the changes. I am disappointed that they came out weak. I'm happy that they've nerfed triple shooting, but nerfed triple shooting, buff their basic attack, but they haven't solved utility issues. They haven't made their spears more reliable, more effective, more important to their kit. Well, sorry, let me take that back. They definitely made the spear very important to their kit, as in, if you don't have the spears, go back and get some. Um, so you never really want to use the spear ability now, especially since the drop in DPS is just so massive. Um, and just in general, um, not a not a particularly good unit to use, because you still come with the range shortcomings. It's very squishy, very easy. People see it, they'll want to jump on it. Um, the setup is basically non-existent. They're not like Janissaries where it takes them a whole 10 seconds. You literally can just run, shoot, aim in the direction. Takes about 1.5 seconds for them to start shooting. So you're not going to have a snap fire. That is really funny because you also get, like, without the spear, they can snap fire because there's no delay with the animation thing, but it's all very convoluted. There's a lot of things that's really cool about this unit, but it's really shit that they've done it this way. Like, another funny thing is that these guys are really good in melee. Like, really good. Like, better than Kriegsrat in melee. Better than Tertios in melee. These are probably the best. These are probably the best. Um, these are probably the best ranged units in melee of ever, ever. And that's really funny because they don't actually have a melee option. You cannot make them go into force melee unless they're out of ammo, which is hilarious because they're actually really cool. So that's the end of the discussion. I hope you guys tell the developers your thoughts as well, but I just want to express that this unit, by all stats and statistics, are not very good. And I'm pretty sure that's kind of what people are feeling. This unit's not very strong. And the way to make them strong is literally reliant on the 5 penetration doctrine. So people are going to have to buy the 5 penetration doctrine if they want to be competitive, which, again, this unit, I mean, competitive with this unit. Again, there are better options. I would literally just be using Imperial Archers. Better than Kriegsrat, better than Imperial Arquebusiers. Um, sort of. Imperial Arquebusier is still kind of king in terms of total DPS, but in terms of usability, Imperial Archers are very good and are very, very close in terms of damage when we're talking about that Bodkin arrow just shooting out 5 volleys in 7 seconds. But I want to just keep this about Swinefeathers. I want them buffed. How I want them buffed? Give them back their base damage. Make them I kind of like. There's twofold things. Get rid of the fire penetration doctrine. The fire penetration doctrine does the exact same thing that double shot does for crossbow units. It holds back the unit because if they're strong, that if they're even slightly competitive base wise, the double shot doctrine will make them go out of control. And we can see that they've literally made it um, so that Pavis and definitely the Demez Obelisk are dealing uh, 30, almost 50% less damage than their competitors, which is absolutely absurd when uh, when you think about it. In this case, without the fire penetration doctrine, you are dealing you're dealing probably a third less damage than everyone else. And the only person you're gonna beat in a firefight is Vassal Longbowman. Except for the fact that Vassal Longbowman has a bunch of bonuses against ranged units, and Vassal Longbowmen have almost twice your range. So, at the end of the day, I think people should definitely avoid this unit. Not any good. And I've been also hearing that the Lionfire crew, not very good either. Oh, Lion's Roar crew, the Lion's Roar crew. Um, the most recent PTR on the Lion's Roar crew neutered them in terms of their damage, so that's good because I wanted their damage to be nerfed, but they screwed over the range again, and um, the funny thing is that they nerfed the damage in two ways. Um, they nerfed the damage in two ways, but that is besides the point. It's it's it is what it is. At least we know that the tier 4 is garbage. No one's gonna really use these guys to make a difference. Could be fun, to use because you still have very powerful spear ability, but it takes too much effort to set these guys up to be the winner. When nearly anything else would probably do way better in the long run than these guys well, these guys could probably do the exact same as any other unit in a short burst, in a short battle. In a long battle, these guys will definitely show weakness. So that's it. I know I tried to end this before, but yeah, that is the end of my discussion on the Swinefeather, the tier 4 of the the new tier 4 for the Lionfire season. I don't think it's any good. They're mostly a generic musket unit because you never want to use the spear. But if you do use the spear, make sure a cavalry is running at you. And again, it's kind of like a oh shit moment. Point them towards the cavalry, put the spears down, and voila, caught a whole cavalry unit. You might lose a couple guys, but you definitely killed a cavalry unit. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, but other than that, my name's Guy. Have a nice day. Bye for now.